So I'm sharing with you just prior to me going into my transmission for today, which is a transmission I'm doing called The Woman Child, and it is all about the Puella Aeterna, which is the eternal child, as I said, in Jungian philosophy. The part of me that has brought this through is a part of me that I've been working on in my own psyche and with my own spiritual journey and my own psychological journey into the self. And it was stemmed by a dream. So a dream I had when I first started the Jungian work that I've been doing this year. And that dream in Jungian psychology is always showing us the unconscious world that we're unaware of in our consciousness, in our waking days. We're unaware of the messages that we're getting through from the unconscious realms. And so dream is a way that those unconscious realms can begin to become conscious if you go through an analysing of that. And this dream started about a child that I'm about to discuss in my call this afternoon, and since then the child has come back frequently in my dream and always with important messages. And it's a very complex unpicking to be able to describe how this psychology works and all the other parts that are deeply tied to yourself and to your understanding of the self. So I'm trying to make a very complex issue as simple as I can, which is always not easy with this kind of work. So what I really wanted to really get to with this sharing is that what's unrooted in me, and as you all know, I was very ill in the last week, and this was to do with the work I was doing. It brought on a cold. I don't know if any of you have also suffered inflammation of illness or cold or virus when you're working on deep soul pieces. That's because the emotional body, the psyche, it's all connected, isn't it? The mind, body and soul. So I went through a really big piece that floored me, put me in bed, brought on this huge viral head cold that I had as I basically part of me, and I hate saying this because it's very new agey, but died. It really did. There was something that I'd been hiding within my personality, a part of me. I was very frightened to bring through because of my eternal child, to be quite honest. And so the child in us, and we all have a child in us, and I'm not talking really about inner child work. The Puella is different, although not separate from the inner child. But the Puella is all the places in us that show us where we're stuck. It's all the places in us where we try to escape the world. It's all the places in us where we don't want to grow up. And we can deny that as much as we want, but the truth is we all have this eternal child in us, to differ in detriment and to the differing positivity that she can also bring. So as I approach my call this afternoon and the work that I'm going to be doing with people into their Puella, into the woman child and man child, if you're masculine, is very deep work. This week in my clinic and working with clients, I've really seen some very deep woundings coming up, very deep traumas from childhood that have held people in certain patterns of self-abuse, patterns of unworthiness, patterns of self-destruction and sabotage and victimhood. And it's very, very hard holding that space for somebody and not completely and utterly feeling the inner child within yourself that also has been through lots of different traumas in life. And it was with a friend I spoke to this week. We spoke about childhood trauma and how it's not really talked about, because unless it's very severe, because we don't really want to, talk about our parents in a bad way. We don't want to bring up those pains, because all of us, every single person on this planet has had some trauma as a child. There's been traumatic parenting, there's been traumatic incidences in your family and with your parents and with your siblings and with the wider family and community. So it's inescapable. And this morning I was watching the some news come up about a panel of doctors that were discussing the current crisis, and they were discussing how affected children are in this crisis that we're currently in, to the fact that children from 2010, born from 2010, their IQ is significantly lower because they've not had the interaction that would be normal for a child. And this has really made me feel about, the inner child healing that's happening with what I'm doing with my clients, and also what's happening in the world, and how this next generation of children are going to have a completely different trauma, and we're going to need to be equipped for that as adults. Like, how do we support those children as they're coming through this climate? And these are questions I'm asking myself as I parent a 15-year-old boy who is not allowed to go to football matches because he needs a test or a vaccine, or is not allowed to engage in, general things like work experience or going to restaurants. Like, how is that impacting him, and how am I as his parent supporting that and feeling like I am trying to give him things to replace those things that he's missing from. And this is something we've spoke of as a family. So these are very challenging times for children, and I don't think we should overlook the critical time that they're in. We're all going through a very big scare, fear. I don't care what side of the fence you're on with what's happening in the world, but it's more about how we're all handling how the threat of a pandemic is affecting our children and our own inner child. Like, my own Puella wants to escape this, so I'm trying to find the ways to parent her, nurture her, so that she doesn't leave reality, so that I stay in my body, and that I try to find ways that are productive, that are non-escapism, if you know what I mean. So I find a lot of healing in creativity. So you see that I do a lot of like herbal remedies, and I make homemade products for the family and friends, and I like to cook, and I like to be in nature, I like to garden, and these are becoming ever increasingly important for my Puella, my little inner girl, so that she doesn't escape into fantasy. And I've done that on my spiritual journey, escaped into a fantasy world, because that is what the Puella does. She imagines herself as all kinds, gatekeepers of the unicorns, the sacred dragon keeper, and twin flame soulmates, all of this crazy stuff that we do to escape the true self. And I'm not saying the magical and the mystical are not real. Of course they are. The other world is completely as real as this world, but I'm just trying to highlight for all of us who are doing the inner work where we might try to escape ourselves, which is different from how we might nurture ourselves through something that creates trauma. So I'm trying to find that balance with my own son. Where will he be trying to escape life, and where can I give him the things that can help him escape the threat but not escape life? So, planning family holidays, going for walks in nature, just having things to look forward to, and things that give us pleasure, and also trying to create his stimulus for his own creativity. So I think it's really important, this, as we move through these times, to understand the pressure that our children are under and the traumatic experience this is on them. Our world is collapsing in many ways, and I am someone who believes that is necessary. Individuation, as Jung termed getting to know and to find your true self, is part of what's happening in the collective too. There's an individuation process going on, in that we are losing everything we know. so that we can find the self. So as I feel the walls of everything I used to know collapsing in the world, I'm also finding that reflected in my own microcosm of my own life and self, and trying to discover the true me, the real me, not under any story, not under any guise, but the real magical, mystical, creative and powerful Colette. And I ask you all to do that as well, to really truly find underneath all the story, underneath all the escapism, underneath all your trauma, who you really are and what you are here for. So I'm going to leave it there because I want to share a little bit more on this in the next coming weeks, but just to give you some food for thought. So take care, everybody. Hug those children really tightly. I'm really feeling them at the moment. And hug your own inner child too. So blessings for now.